Hey, what's up you guys, the Curious Owl here, and today I have my March 2022 wrap up. So March was a very crazy month for me. First of all, I'm filming here in the office because I'm trying to do like 5 million things at the same time. This is the easiest thing for me for right now. Second of all, if you hear anything out that way, Robert is playing games and on the phone with his friends, so that's that. It's just a chaotic day for me, but yeah. Also, March was very chaotic, which is very fitting because I had a ton of reading get done. I managed to get everything on my TBR completed this month, which did mean I also completed my March D20, Wheel of D20 reads for the month, which is awesome. That means that in my April TBR, I will go down to 3 prompts that I have to read from for the entire month, which is awesome. And I'm already a good chunk of the way through that here on April 2nd. Without further ado, let's get into the stats for what I did with March. So, according to my bullet journal, I read a total of 13 books over the course of March, and that came out to a total of 6,554 pages, 0 minutes worth of audiobooks. 12 of the 13 books I read were from my physical library and 1 was an ebook, no audiobooks, and all 13 were from my personal library, whether through my Kindle library or my actual physical TBR. Out of those, I had 5 books that were 5 stars, 3 that were 4-star, 4 that were 3-star, and 1 2-star, so no 1-stars and no DNFs this month. So the first book I did finish this month was The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. This is one of my books for my Wheel of D20 books, so if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that, please go watch that video. There's going to be a lot of books here where I'm going to refer you guys to videos because I don't want to spend too much time talking about them since I've already talked about them at length. But I did give this a 3-star. This was one of the books I thought was a little bit more disappointing, but it was still pretty good. I just feel like the structure of the book wasn't super keen for me. But for my Wheel of D20 picks, this was a poll pick. My next read was my next Wheel of D20 pick, which was Attack on Titan Volume 1 by Hajime Isayama. This was for a manga read, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely loved this, and again, this is in my Wheel of D20 vlog for those of you that would like to hear my more in-depth thoughts on it. But I really enjoyed this one, and I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the series because I feel like that for most manga, it really takes having the first one be a very intriguing read for me to want to read the rest of the series, and this one really hit that for me. So very excited to have an excuse later on down the road for some shorter reads to get through more of this series. The next book that was another book on my Wheel of D20 list was They Went Left by Monica Hesse. This was to fulfill the prompt for a historical read, and again, this one was also a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this. This has got to be fairly up there with like my historical fiction books in terms of my favorite ones. Some of my favorite books are written by Sepades, and I think that this is a very much in the same kind of realm as Sepades. I am actually so in love with this book that I'm very intrigued to read the rest of Monica Hesse's work because this is, I guess, her 3rd novel. But for more of my thoughts on this, also go watch the Wheel of D20 vlog for March. The next book that I read was not for one of my Wheel of D20 books, but was actually for a read-along that I'm participating in with some friends that are basically reading all of Brandon Sanderson's work for the most part, and this month was Mistborn, the first book in the Final Empire series. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, and I actually really enjoyed this. I really had never read anything by Brandon Sanderson before, so this was my first introduction to his writing, and I really enjoyed it. I feel like I understand a lot of the reason why he was picked to eventually take over the Wheel of Time series, which I've also been reading, because I do know that at some point by the end of the series, after Robert Jordan's passing, Brandon ended up taking on the story based on what he had left for him to work with. And I definitely see why, because I feel like that this was a very strong start to a series, but I will say it is very complicated, and because of how complicated it is, it can be a little slow at times because there's a lot of world building and basically lore in a lot of ways that needs to be brought up and discussed. And I really, I think, enjoyed the end the most out of all of this because it really set us up for a very interesting look at what could possibly be going on in the next couple of books, and then going into the companion series or extension series, basically, of the Final Empire. And there is going to be a live show for this on April 9th, which I'm really excited about with everybody that read it. So I'm very excited to talk about more this with the group, but I will leave the information for the read along group down in the description for those of you that would like to maybe catch up if you have not already been a part of it. Speaking of Brandon Sanderson and Robert Jordan though, the next book that I completed was finally getting through The Great Hunt, book 2 of the Wheel of Time series. I do have a review video for this that you can go check out for my more in-depth thoughts, but short and sweet, I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars, really enjoyed it, really liked a lot of what was going on with it, and definitely was interesting in terms of the fact that there's a lot of interesting links that are going to be, I think, further developed further on in the series. Next, I had my next Stephen King read, which was Black House by Stephen King and Peter Straub. This was definitely one of my most disappointing reads of the entire month. This was my only 2-star read, and I do have a review for this if you would like to go check it out, but really just honestly upset with how this went. I almost wish I had not read this duology with this and The Talisman because I feel like I honestly wasted my time. The next book I read was for a book club that I participated in that my friend Princess was also hosting, and the book that we read this month was Ace of Spades by Faridah Abike-Iyimide. This was one of my favorite books I think I've ever read in like this month. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. This was really, I think, upsetting in a lot of ways. Upsetting in the sense that like it made me angry to see these things happening. This is about a school where there is only 2 Black students throughout the entirety of it, and both of those students are being targeted by what is called ACEs. It's very much inspired by the idea of Gossip Girl, and unfortunately it causes a lot of racism, homophobia, things that are kind of brought up about these 2 characters, and it's very, very hard to read this, I think, at times. It's very triggering. I don't think I've had a book in a long time make me cry and scream as much as this one has, and I'm so sad that I missed out on the live show for this one, but I really, really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to see what else Faridah ends up coming out with. Next book I read that is starting up a reread series for me is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I did read this for the 3rd time and do have a review video out for this, and because it's a reread, I don't have much to say on it other than I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, similar to the other 2 times I read it, and I'm very excited to continue with this series again and be able to finally finish it this year. Next, I finally have my last D20 book for this month, which was The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the set of stories that are basically pre-telling the story of Geralt the Witcher. So this is like one of the collections of stories you have to read before getting into the Witcher series, and I loved this a lot. This was for the Robert pick for the Wheel of D20 for March, and I am very excited to get more involved with this series because I actually have it where I'm going to be making a reading series out of this because I loved this so much that I could not put it down, and I don't know why I was so nervous to pick it up in the first place because I was basically worrying about nothing, but yeah, pretty happy with how this one went. This was one of my other 5 stars for the month. I had a really good reading month, honestly. Despite having a few disappointments, I really feel like I had a strong reading month with as chaotic as it was. The next book I read, which was continuing my Practical Magic reading series, was The Rules of Magic, the 2nd prequel by Alice Hoffman. This is basically following the story of the aunts that we know about in the book of Practical Magic, and I really enjoyed this a lot. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and I think that in a lot of ways I wasn't expecting so many things to happen in this and things to be brought up. I guess I really didn't know what to expect with this because with this one and Magic Lessons, because they were prequels to a story I already kind of knew from the movie of Practical Magic, I went into this not knowing what to really expect, but I found that I really enjoyed both of the prequel stories very, very much. And I will say right now that it honestly set me up for a little bit of failure later on, and I'm a little upset with how that's gone. But before I get to that, I do want to say that I did also then read The Dragon Reborn and The Shadow Rising, books 3 and 4 of the Wheel of Time series. I did read these back to back, but unfortunately these 2 are so far the least favorite of the bunch. I gave both of these 3 stars. These were definitely very slow, and I think that they had a lot of issues in terms of my reception of them, but I do have review videos for both of these that I will also link if you're interested. And now finally, the last book I read in March, which I do think was one of my more disappointing reads, was Practical Magic by Alice Hoffman, the book that inspired the adaptation of the movie. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I was really upset with this because I feel like that in a lot of ways there was so much that I feel like the movie did a lot better. I feel like there are a lot of things that were brought up in the book that I think were just way better expressed in the movie than they were in here. And I don't know, just it may be because I'm so biased toward the movie because I've known that story for so much longer than the story that's involved in this one. And don't get me wrong, the movie does, you know, pick up a lot on what is going on here. It just, I think, really exemplifies more of the meaning of the story that I feel like I associate with this, that I don't feel like the book really gets at the heart of. And there's also a lot of things that I feel like shouldn't have been focused on in this one that were, because I think that it was trying so hard to set up this idea of the daughters. But in reality, I feel like this one should have really been the focus of Sally and Jillian, as opposed to having a huge point in the story being involved with the daughters. And because I know that the daughters play a huge role in the sequel that came out, The Book of Magic, so I was really disappointed to see that I don't feel like I really got a good grasp of Sally and Jilly, and they are just not as appealing as characters as they are in the movie. I just really feel like that the movie represented this story and the ideas that were going on here a lot better. But with that said, I am going to try to carefully lift this stack of books. Good Lord. These are the books I read this month with the addition of The Black Flamingo, and now my battery's gonna die, so I'm gonna go. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock, and I will see all you guys in my next video. Bye guys!